Welcome back. Well, today Australia's AAA rating has been reaffirmed despite heading into this recession on the back of coronavirus. The Treasurer says the reconfirmation of the ratings is an expression of confidence in how the government's handled the pandemic.
The credit rating of the sovereign impacts on the cost of borrowing, whether it's by state governments or indeed whether it's by banks. And so this is important for the economy as a whole. And Moody's pointed to the economy's resilience through this crisis and the government's effective policy making. And that's why this is such an important announcement.
Right, it's time now for the economics panel. Right, joining me tonight from the Herald Sun, the wonderful Terry McCrann, and in Sydney, the Australian's economic editor, Adam Creighton. Let's start with you, Adam. Moody's revealed that, yes, we'll keep our AAA. I guess the real problem is the GDP will fall about 5% in real terms. There's also a report due overnight from the IMF. Anything you can tell us there?
Yeah, look, just on the IMF report, the embargo doesn't actually break until 11 p.m. tonight, but I can say that the outlook for the global economy is a lot worse than it was 3 months ago. But there's a silver lining for Australia. Things have actually improved ever so slightly for the Australian outlook. So that's good news. Just on the Moody's credit rating, look, the AAA wasn't really unexpected. I mean, the reality is Australia's debt levels are far, far lower than those in other countries, and so it's kind of a case that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, and that's Australia, I think, at the moment. Our debt levels are about 50% of GDP if you add up state and federal debt, whereas most European countries in America, it's far worse than that.
Right, Terry McCrann, I'm going to jump into another subject. I'll come back to some other things, but I've got to ask you, you know more about climate and energy policy than anyone I could ask. What did you make of Albanese's speech today and this faux or fake bipartisanship?
Well, exactly. I think you've summed it up there, Peter. I mean, Albanese's obviously looking for relevance. He's been looking for relevance right through the COVID experience, and he's also looking for relevance in... This is a fake offer of a bipartisan policy. If you accept the stupidity of what he's saying, if you accept the stupidity of what we're trying to do, we'll all agree to be a little less stupid than would otherwise be the case. This is still about insane reductions in our emissions, utterly to no purpose, as we all know, because we can make absolutely no difference to the global outcome. So there's this sort of parade of faux virtuosity, which is just complete nonsense.
Yeah, and of course, they keep denying the election results that have gone against them every time and then come back and say that everyone's got to do our bidding. It's extraordinary. Adam, I know you've talked about education funding a lot in the past and skills and training. What did you make of the push last week from Dan Tehan that there would be a rephrasing or rephasing of how courses are priced, and we'd put more emphasis, and obviously they'd cost less for the student, in courses where there's a demand, this is nursing and STEM courses, and that we'd sort of ramp up the cost of courses where there is no real job at the end of it. What did you think?
Well, of course, you can quibble at the edges about which subjects are in which buckets, but I think it's it's realistic that when the government's borrowing so much more money, that it has to make efficiencies across the board. And I think one area to make efficiencies is in university courses, especially when all the evidence shows that we're churning out more and more degrees, and I think the public benefit of those degrees is declining. So therefore, it's reasonable to ask the students themselves to chip in more. And of course the HECS help system is still there, so it's not like that there's not support from the government. So look, I mean, overall I thought it was a sensible thing, but I'd rather see the government cap the number of places at university, and basically reverse the free-for-all that the Labor government introduced about 10 years ago.
Right, Terry, I'm going to ask you about super. There's a big push going on from backbench coalition MPs of the left and the right, inside National Party, Liberal Party, the whole gamut there, who want to see the government push back this increase in the superannuation guarantee from 9% to 9.5% on its way up to 12%. Interestingly, yesterday, I was talking to Andrew Clennell on this program. He said, well, no, the PM's not for turning. I said, well, I'd be surprised that they haven't had licence to come out here and say some of these things. I listened to him today and he said, oh, well, the PM might be moving their way. There's a retirement incomes report due next month. Do you think they'll move here?
Well, I certainly hope they move, and I think Adam would agree with me on this, that this is one of his favourite topics, that the intention of putting up, the process of putting up the super from 9 to 12% didn't make any sense before COVID hit and before it was so damaging particularly to SMEs, in terms of the ability to afford this. And so it's become something that's just insane now to continue to go down this path of increasing the cost on business with very, very little ultimate outcome for the so-called beneficiaries that receive this. And so the idea that you should not go down this path, keep it at 9%, I would, and I think Adam would agree, we'd prefer to actually become voluntary even at the 9%. But in the current context, it would be absolutely crazy to increase this burden on business.
Adam, ANZ economists are saying that our nominal wage growth will be just 0.7%. So not even 1%, not even anywhere near inflation, right through till the top half of 2021. If that's the case, why aren't we saying to people, if you want 9.5% in your super, you pay for it? Otherwise, you can get that 0.5% taken as a wage increase right now in your pocket. Why isn't it voluntary?
Well, look, it certainly should be voluntary, and I 100% agree with everything that Terry said. Look, it is likely wage growth is going to collapse. The real unemployment rate, as we know, is more like 12 or 13%, not the 7% that's been published. And of course, the higher unemployment rate is, the weaker wage growth tends to be. And so, that's certainly going to be borne out. Yeah, look, it's just complete madness. The only other factor that I would add to Terry's list of why it would be crazy to lift the superannuation guarantee is that, the superannuation guarantee cost the federal government a fortune in tax concessions. And right now, the federal government is having to borrow vast amounts. I think the SG costs $40 billion a year, and so it's just going to make that even worse. Basically, the debt and deficit situation even worse. So that's just one more reason why it should not be lifted.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time.